Is there really such thing as a true evil? Are there things that we do in life that may on the populace seem as a devastating effect, and actually on the surface, not a bad deal? When we make a mistake as a human error and we make a lot of them, are we truly evil people? No. And yes, at the exact same time. So you think we've gotten to this point in life where a lot of people are taking subjectivity out of the equation and using a populist mob mentality to approach a method of what's appropriate and what isn't. Also seeing a lot of people just sit still because they're afraid of doing something in which, in a sense, is a bad thing too. The comment section down below, you see a lot of people preaching to the choir and everybody stabbing other people's necks and backs just to kind of get their point across and be dominant, which is also subjectively bad too. But there is a goodness behind every intent, and a bad by every intent. Which one's more powerful is debatable during a particular subject. You get to know that later down the line. I wanted to use this vlog as an opportunity to talk about the many things that I've learned throughout 2018, and even further behind, like 2017 and 16, and how far we've come on the internet, and what I tend to see as over-exaggeration. And that's not a thing that's new, by the way. That's happened way past the internet and way before that. I've recently had to relay this. I was actually really hesitant about posting this vlog online because I just didn't know whether it was worth it. But actually, after talking to a few people, I've been very inspired to say these words out here as well. Don't picture that me as entitlement, because again, I can even preach. A lot of these words are subjective, but it further proves my point in how subjective things are. For instance, let's take a really deep and very touchy subject on the internet. I just want to find anything that people would deem as either really bad or really good in a lot of sense. So the big 50-50 divide. Gender equality. So I'm going to tell you this, that like, take this not as gospel, the phrase that I'm about to say, but an idea as an example of what to expect on the internet. So I don't give a shit about gender equality because I see someone as a human always, and the biology certainly stands. Now, picture that as a statement surfacing on the top trending Reddit page. What do you see? Like the outbursts of comments. There's upvotes, there's downvotes. There's a lot of people preaching hell yeah, and there's a lot of people preaching going, that's not a good idea. I don't like your attitude. Burn in hell. So a bunch of people agreeing and a lot of loud noises disagreeing. At the end of the day, those who were loud enough to express their disgust are also on a level of both good and bad. Bad to have been so rude, good to have had a voice. The same can be said about the defense, you know, the idea of actually saying that statement. There's a good and a bad behind of that. It was good to stand a corner, but obviously bad for the subjective eye. What I'm really sort of putting here on the pedestal is that idea there really is nothing to be ashamed of in life. And the media just loves to mad panic everyone and just go absolutely crazy insane, packing everybody together. And as such, the populace just likes to be popular and go with the popular belief instead of standing for their common ground. Again, subjective. It's nice to follow the crowd so you know you can fit in, but it doesn't make you feel unique in a way. There's a both good and bad out of that. Such as a content creator myself. My comedy, my jokes, my music, all subjective. Whether you like it or not, is that corner basis, which is why I can't afford to really take things seriously anymore. So another example I'm going to bring up is a more personal thing that's going on in my life. This is actually something that I am willing to do. 2019, at the beginning, January and February, I am going fucking crazy. And I'm spending a lot of money going to Arizona to meet a lot of friends, going to Texas to PAX South. I'm not a guest there, but I'm just going, meeting some friends, having a bunch of fun, maybe going out to a few metal gigs and having a few bevies. Then February, I'm off to Virginia. I might go see the Bethesda office. You know, I can't exactly go in there, but, you know, seeing the outside of it and just being around there is really nice. I already saw the White House and shouted obscenities. And I thought that was funny, and a few people around me thought that was funny, but there's always a subjective eye. So that was good and bad, but if we festered on the bad, we wouldn't be doing anything in life. And that sounds rude. It sounds very careless. It sounds like we don't care about it. Truth is, we do, but if we cared too much about it, we wouldn't be doing anything. Same can be said about a lot of things that we do in life. They're all human errors, but if we had to be so afraid of making human errors, then we'd all be sat still, like a lot of you choose to do. You just sit still and do nothing with your lives and actually distance yourself from life. Now, it's good because you're safe, but it's bad because it's boring. And you don't get life lessons, you don't get experiences, you don't really have anything to show for the lessons you've learned, you don't really have a leg to stand on. So good and bad subjectively, again, people like to pedestal themselves. There's an ego pride that people have in this generation, and that stinks, personally for me, but subjectivity aside. Now, anyway, going through all of that stuff in 2019, it's gonna be crazy for me, it's gonna be fun. Now, already, there's two sides of the coin here. There's two flips. Some are on the side of going, hell yes, you deserve it, 2018 has been the shittest year of your life, you need to go out there and have some fun. And the other side, which is like, I don't know. It could be too dangerous. It could be seen as really cruel and uncaring for everybody else. Already, we have a good and a bad out of something. We tend to fester on the bad side of things because we all have that intent in our heart, and it's very clear that it's pointed out that our intent is clear not to be a cynical bastard. And I think just explaining that you're not trying to be a cynical bastard is enough for you to just go out there and make the joke anyway, because it wasn't in a face of cynicism. If you have a contrary argument to that opinion, then you can't be judged for it. In a sense, it's an observational side of things, which is another thing to be laughed at. Observational humor. Subjectively good and bad. But since we fester on this, I'm going to be perfectly honest here. There's literally nothing wrong with anything as long as there's a good to it as well. It's not as evil as people make it out to be. This whole trip going out to 2019 and exploring and having fun, you know, I'm single. You know, I'm about to go out there and just be crazy. Just go wild, you know? There is nothing wrong with that because you're not holding any bars, you're not lying to people, you're actually going out there and adventuring, you know what I'm saying? Many people would see that as insensitive, but no, that's what any human would do if they were single and they were in a really shit part of their life. You'd want to go crazy too, throw the biggest party in the world. Now again, that's subjective. You might think it's dangerous, but please don't ever call it evil. And don't judge a person based on that thing. It leads you to a lot of subjectivity in yourself where you might believe you're doing a good thing, but also you forget that there's also a bad side to it. So always keep that medium ground. Don't push yourself too high. Don't push yourself too low. Unless you're selling yourself. You know, if you're selling yourself to a company or if you're selling yourself to a populace like a media, be proud of who you are. Just push yourself out there. It doesn't mean you should always be like, oh, I'm just a middle person, I'm mediocre. Because if you were expecting stuff, if you were expecting to go places, wrong mindset to have. You have to be confident with what you do. But be prepared to also be shunned too, because that subjectively has a good and a bad thing in itself. Bad because it's truthful. Well, no, that's good, really. You're good because it's truthful and honest. Bad because, I mean, it's never nice to hear those words. Of course it isn't. But it's good because it's truthful and it's honest. And what can we do with that is we learn and take that forward, you know? That's every critique that we get. We always have to start with something that's shit. But we get better over time because we hear criticisms about it. Now, I personally, subjectively, I think that the criticisms that can be completely avoided are things like, oh, you suck. Well, why do I suck? You know? Is there a way that I can improve? Criticism is that. It's basically telling you where you went wrong and maybe how you could possibly improve it. Now, you don't have to listen to everybody. You don't have to listen to it as gospel. But you put your word out there, and much like voting for the American government, even just putting your word out there with nothing coming out of it is still enough because you still made an impact. You still had a decision. You showed your number there as the person who defended it. Subjectively, whether having the right party or the wrong party. Everybody's got their crooks. I don't know. Again, picture I just go out there in 2019 and just go and do it. I end up making a human error down the line with that. I may have had too much fun, let's say, like going bombastic crazy, started taking drugs, started doing all this stuff. Which, by the way, I don't really like doing. That's just me. But if I landed myself in quote-unquote trouble. The good side of it is it was human. As long as it doesn't repeat itself, then, you know, it's gonna be hunky-dory. But also the bad side, it happened, you know, and it outraged, again, a subjective 50-50 agenda. Once we start feeling affected by something is when we tend to change. Which is why I feel like people don't really need to apologize for being human. If people call somebody out online, it's like exposes. A lot of people tend to over-exaggerate somebody's human error because they've seen it done once. You know, fair enough, if you've seen it happen like many times before, then yeah, they're obviously not learning, and obviously that's very annoying, cumbersome, troublesome, all that sort of stuff. But to be fair, if you've only seen it happen once, can you label them truly as evil? No. You really can't. Which is why I stopped giving a shit about what people thought. And it's why a lot of people who are in a bigger medium don't strive to do apologies anymore. They don't strive to do that stuff. Because actually, we're living in a world where apologizing is a meme. Now you can't apologize. Subjectively. Personally, I still think you can. And you know, the actions speak louder than words, of course. But I do think the word sorry does mean a lot more than people think, and it does match up. Having both apologizing and also working to fix what they've done subjectively, let's put it this way, is what's going to make the world spin. It's going to be a good outcome for everybody. I apologize, I'm also drinking McDonald's milkshake. Subjectively, you might hate it. So like I said, I told everyone I'm going apeshit crazy. Hell yeah, treat yourself 2018 shit. No, it's dangerous, that's bad. Let's face it, if we thought like that all the time, we'd all be sat still doing nothing. And while most would think that's a safe bet, it's also a very, very boring and dry and soul-crushing thing to do. Subjectively, once again, it's all good and bad. It's all a subjective playing field. And, you know, people loud enough to disagree. I'm actually reading this because there are a few bullet points here. I'm not very good because, as you can tell, I've just woken up. I kind of need to read all this stuff. Since it's all a subjective playing field, we have to remember that people who are loud enough to disagree are on a bias and only stand for a one-sided standpoint. I think I made a song about that called Trojan. People often see that as just the virus, and I get it. I get it, that's a joke. I'm not laughing yet. I should, but it's too early. Subjectively. But while I'm here, the subject matter did base on just hearing one thing and taking a bias to it and just going apeshit crazy about it. That is a virus. It is something that spreads. It is wildfire, and the wrong kind of information can just go out there and it can be stupid. I'm gonna say this, is like people who shout out at subjective nonsense are both doing a good and bad thing with themselves. It's kind of hilarious seeing them try to look good about what they've done, but it's also interesting because it's kind of like, it's really funny when you finally put that selective subjectivity on the table. You treat somebody as just a human, remove the labeling, and they're just human. Seeing themselves pedestal themselves with something is, one, interesting, and two, fucking hilarious. For me personally, I laugh at it. I think it's funny because it's all subjective. At the end of the day, just being louder about it means absolutely nothing to this world, and the world's just gonna keep spinning. There's a sky, there's a floor, we are people. The world's gonna keep spinning regardless of your opinion, so let's just have fun, okay? Subjective fun. It's like funny. You think you're God's gift, and that's hilarious. And that's one perspective. The other one would be like, well, if he's self-deprecating himself, we don't see smiles. There's often a reason why people defend themselves to a medium, because, you know, they want to feel good about themselves. And kudos, well done. You felt good about yourself. I think that's awesome. But that's why I can never judge people. I never be bad or good. I can laugh. You know, I have a funny bone. I think laughing is great. You know, if you can't laugh at yourself, then you can't laugh at anything else. And I think humor is just, well, it's the greatest because it is subjective. And I think it's funnier when people do get hurt by it, because seeing their outrage is what kind of makes the point more valid. A good quote by John Cleese, actually. We don't make jokes, we just point them out. Now, of course, there are set bars. You know, there's certain pedestals where we cannot touch. We didn't resurrect Hitler from the dead. We didn't go on a murderous rampage. You haven't cheated, you haven't massively lied, and you haven't stuffed people into poverty. 5 key points here. There's probably a fair bit more where it's like, you know, obviously rape and child abuse and just abuse of any kind, just of a bad, really horrible, crazy intent. Who wants to hit a baby, really? We joke about it. We joke about kicking plastic babies. We do that. It's kind of funny, but we're not actually kicking a real baby. And subjectively, a lot of people might find that line is like, well, you're provoking it. Both subjective and a bad thing because, right, it might be to you, but I don't know if it is to everyone else. It's a good and a bad thing all around. And if we just festered on the bad, we really wouldn't be doing anything, and we'd all become Europe. It's the same way we make jokes. I can point you out on all of my mistakes that I've ever done in my life. I have cheated before. I think this was last year. We've amended that because, like, we're still best friends, and I think that's, like, the best outcome you can have. Learn from your mistakes and still be with your friends. You already know this, I've already expressed this, there's really nothing to hide with me. I've fapped to some pretty controversial stuff. People that might find it very creepy and very weird. Which is something I've had to learn from too. You know, being a young person, you don't even know what the hell a tit is. We've all fapped to some pretty subjective things. I have a large collection of dildos because I think there is a pleasure behind them. I've also taken drugs, I've taken weed, I've taken mushrooms, I've taken speed, you know, all these things in my young youth. You know, all these things. I've made errors, but notice how they're all different. And errors are subjective regardless, because as a taste of opinion, you might find it creepy. As a taste of opinion, you might find it fine. At the end of the day, can you actually say that they're evil? No, you actually can't, because it doesn't stand as anything. It didn't kill you. It didn't lie to you. In fact, this was the most honest thing in the world. Surprising me if I'm this honest. There's certain things that people like to keep from life. And there's a big reason, because why should you want to pry into it? And I know why, because the moment people pry into somebody's personal life, especially when they're a big shot, the whole world goes in a rampage. And this is where I found it hard to fit into other people, especially groups of friends that aren't YouTubers who are literally just viewers or fans. It's very, very, very tough for me to fit in, because I'm still doing the same human things as they are, the same principles that they are, with the same exact consequences, the same thing. But they're not gonna get talked to about it if something goes wrong. They're not gonna be shunned. Guess who is? Moi. And I think that's fucking disgusting. To put somebody as a precedent of numbers. Now, fair enough, there's the argument, well, you're setting an example. We set an example with our medium. The moment you pried into our lives and tried to dig this shit out, you're the ones to blame here. And that's a subjective playing field too. So at the end of the day, this was my true point here. That I'm looking at all these exposed channels, I'm looking at all these news channels, I'm looking at all these really immature faces of mine, and I'm gonna be perfectly honest, the only thing they care about is money and fame. They have no emotion to them, no dignity to them, and they're just gonna keep doing the way they do their things. Because they know that people pry on mob mentality and people pry on negative media and like to stick with it. And so they cheat the algorithm by doing so. In a sense, there's not really that many exposed channels that are out there to spread positivity, you know what I'm saying? Because everybody knows that negative press is the quickest and loudest press. Which, hey, blame yourselves for that. You don't like it, but again, you can't say that because there's the subjectivity in good and bad. Good in the idea that you're kind of aware that it's not a good thing to just be prying on negatives. But bad because you're influencing it anyway. You know you click on it, and you know that you watch it, and you know that you get a thrill out of it. So no, don't blame the media outlets. Blame yourselves for introducing that medium. Because I'm actually going to go on precedent here. I'm going to take the example of Logan Paul with the filming a dead body. So he filmed a dead body once. Has he done it again? No. No, not really. Because he knew the outrage that happened. And he was human enough to be like, yeah, sorry, won't happen again. Aside from whatever excuses he had, because at the end of the day, we know excuses, he still did what he did. I don't think that was his point. His point was that he was doing an apology like everybody asked him to. And then it felt like it was all being thrown back in his face. Now, people doing that aren't good either. And they end up pushing themselves to say that they're the better people just because they weren't the ones who filmed the dead body. Yeah, but I'm pretty sure they ended up writing a nasty comment about killing somebody. That's equally just as bad as suicide. Murder is worse than suicide. I'm going to say that because, you know, somebody who didn't want to die has gone and died by somebody else. You know, that's a horrible thing. So even threatening that in the first place is way worse, subjectively, than the actual incident that happened. And as such, like negative press, it just fades. It disappears. You don't hear of any bad stuff again. You just kind of see it. You just kind of see life move on. Because all I have to do, and I did this a while ago. I was in my own fan server. I went to the general. I just said the words Logan Paul, and I knew what I was expecting. And I hated it. I actually really hated it because what I ended up getting was, oh my god, not that name again. Can we shut up about him? I fucking hate it. And that's exactly what I was expecting. When actually, you know, because there's a difference between hope and expectation. The expectation I got was that they'd say that. The hope was that maybe there was somebody in there that had a medium head that went, you know, he hasn't done anything in a while, give him a break. You know, some sort of medium ground. But mob mentality approaches, and then, boom, you end up getting what the populace believes, which is both a subjective good and bad at the same time. So is there such inheritance with being good all the time? No. Is there such inheritance in being bad all the time? No. Everything is subjective. As long as you didn't kill somebody, you didn't cheat, you didn't lie, and whatever mistake you have learned from, I hope it stays that way. And like, as for me, I'm doing my life, I'm staying the way I'm doing my life, and I think you all have the entitlement to do the same. As for me, I don't plan to do much else after this. I'm just gonna play some video games and make music. Kinda like I always wanted to do. But this vlog felt like I wanted to say it. I really, really, really wanted to say it. Too many people say I need to, but that's subjective too. What isn't subjective is a want. You want something, that's pretty black and white. So thanks for listening. I hope you learned from any of this. Of course, if you have any opinions, put down in the comments below. But as it does, it further proves my point right in the subjectivity. But feel free to say what you want to say, because I think you all have the right to say something. In this world, I think we're all still cavemen. Let's just fucking party. Take it easy, guys. Peace out!